Hello and welcome to this evening's Scotland at 7 from Broadcasting Scotland. I'm Ruth Watson. The Ukraine update, day 103 of Russia's war in Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky visited his troops on Ukraine's eastern front lines on Sunday to understand the position of Ukrainian defenders as Russia's assault on Donbass continues. According to a press release from his office, Zelensky visited command posts and frontline positions of Ukrainian troops in the area of Bakhmut in the Donetsk region and Lysychansk in the Luhansk region, just a few kilometers south from Severodonetsk, where Ukraine claims to be fighting back in one of the war's biggest ground battles. Russian forces continue to storm the eastern city of Severodonetsk and fired missiles at the nearby cities of Slavyansk, Lysychansk and Orykhov, Ukraine's military has said. Russian troops fired at Ukrainian units defending Severodonetsk with mortars and artillery fire, damaging infrastructure in the towns of Metolinko, Borivske, Ustinivka and Toshkivka. Serhiy Haidai, Ukraine's governor of Luhansk, has reported today that the situation has worsened a little for Ukraine in Severodonetsk and that there is intense street fighting. A total of 262 children have been killed and 467 injured since Russia invaded Ukraine, according to newly released figures from Ukraine's Prosecutor General's office. The Russian missile attack on Kyiv early on Sunday was likely an attempt to disrupt the supply of Western military equipment to frontline Ukrainian units, according to British intelligence. The UK is to supply long-range rocket artillery to Ukraine. The UK will send a handful of tracked M270 multiple-launch rocket systems, which can hit targets up to 50 miles away. Russia should not close the US embassy in Moscow, despite the crisis triggered by the war in Ukraine, because the world's two biggest nuclear powers must continue to talk, the US ambassador to Moscow, John J. Sullivan, was quoted as saying. NATO kicked off a nearly 2-week US-led naval exercise on the Baltic Sea on Sunday with more than 7,000 sailors, air personnel and Marines from 16 nations, including Finland and Sweden, who aspire to join the military alliance. A Russian general, Major General Roman Kutuzov, was killed in eastern Ukraine, a Russian state media journalist said on Sunday, adding to the string of high-ranking military casualties sustained by Moscow. There was no immediate comment from the Russian Defense Ministry. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's visit to Serbia has been cancelled after countries around Serbia closed their airspace to his aircraft, according to local media reports. A senior foreign ministry source told the Interfax news agency that Bulgaria, North Macedonia and Montenegro had closed their airspace to the plane that would have carried Moscow's top diplomat to Belgrade on Monday. Our diplomacy has yet to master teleportation, the source said. Spain is to supply Ukraine with anti-aircraft missiles and Leopard battle tanks in a step-up of its military support, according to government sources cited by newspaper El País. As we go on air, Conservative MPs are voting in a vote of no confidence in Boris Johnson. The threshold of 54 letters from Conservative MPs seeking his departure was reached over the weekend, and this morning, Graham Brady, the chair of the 1922 committee that represents backbench Tories, announced in a statement that the threshold of 15% of MPs seeking a confidence vote numbering 54 has been exceeded. To stay in office, Johnson needs to win the support of at least 50% of all Tory MPs plus one, totalling 180. If he does win, he is theoretically safe from such a challenge for a year, although the rules can be changed. Johnson supporting MPs have been doing the media rounds, insisting that a majority of one was enough for Boris Johnson to keep his job as leader of the Tories, with Jacob Rees-Mogg insisting that a majority of one is how democracy works. Commenting, SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford MP said, Boris Johnson is completely unfit to be Prime Minister and he should have been removed from office long ago. He has broken the law, lied to Parliament and distracted the UK government from tackling the issues that matter, including the Tory cost of living crisis and the long-term damage caused by Brexit. Tory MPs must finally put in the interests of the public first, Mr Blackford said. They must vote Boris Johnson out and do it now. There cannot be any more flip-flopping from Douglas Ross and the Scottish Tories. Ross has made himself and the Tory Holyrood group look utterly ridiculous while the rest of the spineless Scottish Tory MPs have shown nothing but craven loyalty to Boris Johnson, Mr Blackford added. It is way past time for all of them to finally do the right thing and vote him out of office. But for Scotland, the outcome of this vote will change very little. We will still have a Tory government we didn't vote for, imposing devastating policies we do not support. The only way to keep Scotland safe from Tory cuts, Brexit and Westminster control is to become an independent country and escape the broken Westminster system for good, Mr Blackford concluded. Households in Scotland are paying more for their gas and electricity bills compared with England and Wales, according to new figures. Researchers at comparethemarket.com have compiled data on the average fuel bills across the UK, and using ONS household statistics, Scotland has come out with the highest average energy bill. Despite Scotland having an abundance of resources in oil, gas and renewables, Scots are paying on average £1,651 per year, while people in England pay £1,554 per year and Wales £1,525. The highest bills in the UK were found in Shetland and Orkney, with bills there costing households £2,642 and £2,504 respectively. Commenting, SNP MSP Graham Day said, Scotland is paying the price for sky-high energy bills despite Scotland having an abundance of resources in oil and gas and renewables. Under Westminster control, the vast revenue from Scotland's oil and gas industry has been squandered by UK governments for decades, and now it is consumers in Scotland who are getting hammered with higher average energy bills than anywhere else in the UK. This also is a result of the outrageous and expensive transmission charges that are charged in Scotland for companies to access the national grid here, Mr Day concluded. Petrol prices soared by almost 6p a litre at UK forecourts over the past week to a fresh record, with drivers warned they could exceed 180p this week. The RAC called for radical government intervention after figures from the data firm Experian Catalyst showed the average cost of a litre of petrol reached a record 177.9p on Sunday, up from 172.1p on the 27th of May. This means filling a typical 55-litre family car with petrol has become about £3 more expensive over the week. Diesel prices rose from 182.7p a litre to a record 185p a litre over the same period. The RAC fuel spokesperson, Simon Williams, demanded more action from the Westminster government after the 5p a litre cut in fuel duty implemented in March. A litre of unleaded is now a frightening 177.88p, while diesel is 185p, an increase of 2p already this month. With oil above $120 a barrel and sterling still at $1.2, worse is still to come, he said. Sadly, we expect to see the average price of petrol break through the 180p mark this week, with diesel moving further towards 190p. More radical government intervention is urgently needed, whether that's in the form of a further reduction in fuel duty or a VAT cut. As it is, drivers surely won't be able to cope unless something is done to help, he concluded. The rising cost of diesel is further adding to rising costs being faced by businesses and will have to be passed on to consumers. The Home Office is offering to fly asylum seekers back to the conflict zones they escaped from if they do not wish to be sent to Rwanda, according to a report in The Guardian. Documents issued to the first group of asylum seekers facing removal to the East African country state that the Home Office's voluntary return service can help them go back to their home country. The document adds, you have the option to leave the UK voluntarily. However, should you be removed, it will be to Rwanda. All of those who face being sent to Rwanda have had their asylum claims deemed inadmissible by the Home Office because of their method of reaching the UK, generally crossing the Channel in a dinghy. The letter adds, there is no right of appeal against a decision to treat your asylum claim as inadmissible. Those currently detained for offshoring include Syrians, Sudanese, Afghans, Eritreans, Iranians and Iraqis, some of whose home countries are active conflict zones. Karen Doyle of Movement for Justice said, "It's as if the Home Office is saying to this group of asylum seekers, here's a hell we created for you in Rwanda, but you can choose to go back to the hell you escaped from instead. This is not a choice. These are refugees who cannot return home. In practice, this is ripping up the UK's stated commitment to refugees." A significant number of those in the first group of 100 who have been targeted for offshoring to Rwanda are from Sudan. The Sudanese are not yet the largest nationality group to arrive in the UK in small boats in the first quarter of this year, where they ranked 7th with 137 arrivals between January and March of this year. They have a 92% grant rate for asylum claims. The largest nationality groups arriving on small boats were Afghans with 1,094 people, followed by Iranians with 722 arrivals. Legal challenges against the plans have been mounted by Home Office Workers Union, PCS, and several refugee and human rights charities. A group of asylum seekers facing offshoring embarked on a hunger strike this week, and on Friday, dozens in Brookhouse Detention Centre near Gatwick Airport started a protest in the exercise yard. Scotland's continued support and solidarity for all those affected by Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, particularly those who have been displaced, will be underlined when Minister with Special Responsibilities for Refugees from Ukraine, Neil Gray, visits Poland this week. Mr Gray will provide reassurance that Scotland is a place of refuge and sanctuary for displaced people from Ukraine, and that they are assured of a warm Scottish welcome and support while Scotland is their home. During his two-day visit to Warsaw and Krakow from the 7th to 8th of June, the Minister will visit rescue hubs and centres, meet with Polish officials, representatives from some of Scotland's key partners, UNICEF and the Red Cross, to learn more about their vital work, and also those who have been displaced by the conflict. Since the war began more than 100 days ago, 3,747 displaced Ukrainians with a sponsor location in Scotland have arrived in the UK. There have now been 10,901 visas issued with a Scottish sponsor via the Ukraine Sponsorship Scheme, made up of 7,642 visas supplied through the Scottish Government's Super Sponsor Scheme, and a further 3,259 visas issued from matches with an individual sponsor in Scotland. The Scottish Government is working closely with local authorities and third sector parties who are providing accommodation and practical help such as clothing, healthcare, trauma support and translation services to those who need it. In addition, the Scottish Government has provided £4 million in financial aid to help with basic humanitarian assistance, including the provision of healthcare, water and sanitation, and shelter for those fleeing Ukraine. Of this, £1 million was allocated by the British Red Cross and CF, both members of our Standing Humanitarian Emergency Panel. £2 million has gone to Ukraine via the Disasters Emergency Committee's appeal lodged in Scotland, and £1 million was allocated to UNICEF to support work providing life-saving services and support for families, including children with disabilities. Mr Neil Gray said, "From the start of this brutal and illegal invasion, the people of Scotland have opened their arms in solidarity and support to displaced Ukrainians who have been forced to flee their homeland. With the invasion now past the 100-day mark, it is vitally important that we continue to show our solidarity and support for Ukraine, and also for the Polish people and authorities who are helping them." The House Select Committee in America investigating the Capitol attack will unveil new evidence at a Watergate-style public hearing next week, showing Donald Trump and top aides acted with corrupt intent to stop Joe Biden's certification, according to sources close to the inquiry. The panel intends to use the hearings as its principal method of revealing potential crimes by Trump as he sought to overturn the 2020 election results, sources said, in what could be a treacherous legal and political moment for the former president. As the Justice Department mounts parallel investigations into the Capitol attack, the Select Committee is hoping that the previously unseen evidence will leave an indelible mark on the American public about the extent to which Trump went in trying to return himself to the Oval Office. The panel's ambitions for the hearings are twofold, sources said, presenting the basis for alleging Trump broke the law and placing the Capitol attack in a broader context of efforts to overturn the election, with the ex-president's involvement as the central thread. At their heart, the hearings are about stilling thousands of communications between top Trump White House aides and operatives outside the administration and the Trump campaign into a compelling narrative about the events of the 6th of January, sources said. In order to tell that story, sources said, the Select Committee intends to have its senior investigative counsels reveal previously secret White House records, photos, and videos that would be presented in real time to starkly illustrate the live witness testimony. On Thursday night, at the inaugural hearing at 8 p.m., the panel's chairman, Benny Thompson, and the vice chair, Liz Cheney, are likely to make opening arguments, outline a roadmap for the hearings, and give an overview of the events of the 6th of January and the preceding weeks. The panel is likely to focus on broad themes for the following 4 hearings, such as how Trump used false claims of voter fraud to undermine the 2020 election and future races, and how he tried to use fake electors to deceive Congress into returning him to office. House investigators are also likely to focus on how Trump directly pivoted to the 6th of January congressional certification and not the December deadlines for states to certify their electors as an inflection point, and how his actions led straight to militia and far-right groups' covert maneuverings. The panel is then likely to reserve its most explosive revelations for the final hearing in prime time, where the Select Committee members, Adam Kinzinger and Elaine Luria, are expected to run through Trump's actions and inactions as the 6th of January attack unfolded. The list of witnesses has not yet been finalized, sources said, but it is expected to include top aides to former Vice President Mike Pence, aides to Trump's former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, and people with direct knowledge of militia group activities on the 6th of January. From a legal perspective, the panel has already alleged in court filings that Trump and his external legal advisor, John Eastman, violated multiple federal laws to overturn 2020 election outcomes, including obstruction of Congress and defrauding the United States. The Select Committee hopes that by revealing new evidence in hearings, the sources said, it can convince beyond a reasonable doubt that the American public and potentially the Justice Department that the former president violated laws to reverse his 2020 election defeat. Projects that support biodiversity and improve the health and well-being of local communities are set to benefit from further funding. All local authorities, plus Scotland's 2 national parks, will receive a share of £6.5 million directly from the Scottish Government's Edinburgh Process Fund, the second stream of the £65 million annual Nature Restoration Fund. £5 million has been allocated to local authorities to deliver projects that support the priority aims of the fund: habitat and species restoration, freshwater restoration, coastal and marine protection, and the eradication of non-native species. Councils can also apply to top up their direct allocation from a £1.5 million pot to deliver larger-scale multi-year nature restoration projects. Biodiversity Minister Lorna Slater visited Howden Park in West Lothian to see how previous allocations from the Nature Restoration Fund have helped the local council to improve the biodiversity, connectivity and climate resilience of the popular park, Ms Slater said. The Scottish Government is committed to tackling the twin crises of biodiversity loss and climate change both at home and abroad. Connecting people with nature in urban and rural areas brings so many benefits in terms of health and well-being. Improving our more green spaces will enable people to enjoy spending time outdoors and care for the natural environment on their doorstep, Ms Slater added. New funding of £500,000 will support the development of wild salmon conservation measures. The money will be used for 2 projects: the National Adult Sampling Plan, which provides crucial data on wild salmon stock, and the development of a standardised fisheries management plan template, which can be used by all the fisheries management areas in Scotland. Rural Affairs Secretary Mari Gudjon will announce the funding as part of a speech to international delegates and Scottish stakeholders at the North Atlantic Salmon Conservation Organisation annual meeting this evening. It follows the publication of the Scottish Government's Wild Salmon Strategy, which aims to bring the wild salmon population in Scotland back from crisis point. An implementation plan for the strategy will be introduced by the end of the year. Rural Affairs Secretary Mari Gudjon said, I am looking forward to addressing the National Atlantic Salmon Conservation Organisation delegates at their conference and highlighting the significant work that is being done in Scotland to reverse the decline in wild salmon stocks. In addition to the measures we will take in Scotland, we are committed to supporting and pushing forward collective action in the international arena so the young salmon leaving our rivers survive the many challenges they face on the high seas to return to their home river to spawn the next generation. Recently published salmon fisheries statistics continue to confirm the downward trend in the numbers of wild salmon returning to Scottish rivers, and we must now reinvigorate our collective efforts to ensure a positive future for the species. Only by acting together at home and overseas and applying our collective resource, knowledge and expertise can we hope to change the fortunes for this iconic and vital species, Ms. Gudrun concluded. Scotland is a stronghold for salmon, which start their lives in streams and rivers, migrate to the high seas to grow, and return home to spawn, connecting diverse habitats over a vast area. Salmon are affected by a wide range of pressures, some at sea, but many others acting within the Scottish freshwater and coastal environments. A key contributory factor appears to be climate change. Well, that is the news for this evening. I'm very pleased to say that we have a humanitarian aid worker and activist, Chris McCusker, joining us this evening. Hello, Chris. How are you doing this evening?
I'm grand, Ruth. I'm grand. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. So, to start off with, can I ask you what are your views on the situation with what's happening in Ukraine? Where do you think the international community is going with their response, and how much longer do you think those very, very brave people that are defending their nation of Ukraine, how do you think things are working out in the defence of Ukraine?
Well, frankly, every day I think is a victory for the people of Ukraine who are defending their country with valour. And not to mention an awful lot of honour as well. As to how long it will take, that is anyone's guess. We're now into day 103, and there doesn't look to be any resolvement in sight. And I think it's quite right, obviously, that the embassies have to stay open in order for communication to remain open and discussions to be had. The wider countries in Europe again have to be resilient in the sanctions that they've placed so far, and to my mind, I think that they need to go a little bit further, to drive home, their resolve in showing their solidarity, for Ukraine and for what the Ukrainian people are fighting for.
What do you think about the humanitarian response that's coming out of the United Kingdom? And the Westminster government has a pretty appalling track record on the way they treat refugees from many countries, but there seems to be, although a very slow start and quite a lot of obstructions to Ukrainian people coming over here, there do now seem to be more people coming in to Scotland. But I know there's a Professor Lucy Easthope, who is a professor who deals with crisis management, is quite concerned about some of the impacts that Ukrainian refugees may find themselves in because of the vetting process and the matching process and some of the homes that are being opened. It seems that perhaps people aren't quite prepared or supported enough to make the matching work, and refugees may find themselves in another difficult situation.
Yeah, I mean, I said from the outset that the whole Ukrainian scheme was set up to fail, and what maybe not set up to fail, but set up to not work as cohesively and coherently as laid out in paper. My own experience with the refugee charity that I help coordinate, Eastwood Refugee Aid. We are supporting Ukrainian refugees, Afghanistan refugees that are in the hotels, and that alongside our continued support for our friends at Care for Calais in France, who actually have got quite a few Ukrainian refugees who, were told the wrong information to converge in Paris, Nice, various capital cities in France, and apply for their immigration that way. They've been left in the wind. So our commitment is that we don't discriminate against anyone who is a refugee, regardless of their colour, ethnicity, or background. And in fact, we also help the homeless here in Glasgow. But the community that we've got in East Wren is growing, but it's growing at a very slow rate. And East Wren is a fairly affluent constituency. But the problem being is that although many people have actually signed up for the UK resettlement scheme, I know from first-hand experience, because I signed up for it myself, that the emails from the UK government are kind of like one a month, and they're just general updates. And they seem to be very generic as well. They're not, written person to person.
Do you get the sense that among the wider community there perhaps is a greater understanding and willingness to open their homes, not just to Ukrainian refugees, but to all refugees? Do you think that this, coupled with the news coming about Rwanda and refugees being sent out to Rwanda pending, do you think that this perhaps has spurred a greater understanding of the issues facing refugees in general?
I think it's spurned a greater understanding. However, I don't think it's spurned a greater tolerance. There is still, I'm going to be controversial here, but there is still an intolerance towards brown Muslims that are refugees through no fault of their own. And I find it quite bizarre that white Christians are put to the top of the pecking order. And that's no disrespect to the Ukrainian people. I just find it really bizarre. I was working in my refugee hub today, and a person passed me with a load of bags, obviously going down to one of the other charity shops in Clarkson. And I think they stopped kind of like halfway down, and they came back up and said, "I was going to go to a charity shop, but could you use this stuff?" And and I found it bizarre that they had to walk, like 50, 80 steps in order for their conscience to sort of like click in and say, "Well, wait a minute, maybe the Ukrainian people or the Afghan people can, use this stuff that I was going to give to a charity, which will sell it, obviously, in order to, not make profit, but help with the running costs. Whereas we don't charge anything. We invite Afghan and Ukrainian refugees in Glasgow to actually come into our hub, have a look at what we've got, and if they want it, they can walk out the door with it.
Well, it's good to hear that there are people doing so much work within the community, and perhaps awareness will keep on raising, and especially as Kenmore Street sort of inspired actions perhaps will raise awareness about solidarity, the solidarity required as the Rwandan deportations come closer. Moving on to a lost cause potentially, we're looking at Boris Johnson with his facing his no confidence vote. I'm seeing the news below that both David Munnell and John Lamont have voted against the PM. Douglas Ross has, is it his sixth flip flop? He's now voting, saying he'll vote against. And I see that that Andrew Bowie is refusing to say which direction he's going to flip his flop in. So, what are your views on the state that we find ourselves in with the strong and stable governance coming from Westminster?
Well, you know, I mean, obviously it's unacceptable because it's basically it's paralysing the government to function properly, and you know, although it is going through the motions, you know, I watched the pensions questions this afternoon, as quite a lot of it, you know, pertains to the benefits as well from the DWP and stuff like that. So I mean, it seems to be working as normal, and the normal grievance from the Tory party continues against people that are on benefits and people that are disabled and, you know, unpaid carers like myself. So you know, this won't feature much in the panacea of Scottish politics. Yes, you know, people will take interest in it, and you know, and will make great mirth, you know, and whatever the outcome is. But in the grand scheme of things, we have to be careful, because this is one of these situations where, you know, I think you have to be careful for what you wish for, because I actually shudder at the potential replacements for Boris Johnson. I really do. There is no one capable. I honestly, I would say that I would much rather, at this moment in time, that Theresa May actually took over, you know, from Boris Johnson. I would say that she was, you know, maybe not. I think she was, you know, obviously a far capable prime minister than Boris Johnson. You know, not that she was to my liking, but you know, you would have less of this nonsense with someone of her ilk. And I look at that front bench, and I don't see anybody that inspires any modicum of confidence. You know, they're all psychopaths, each and every single one of them. And I think it's obviously a prerequisite quality to qualify for the front bench, is to be, you know, just as arrogant and elitist as the leader, and have scant regard for the people of the constituent parts of this country.
I note that Theresa May says she's refusing to say how she voted, but I saw reports earlier that she turned up to the vote wearing a ball gown. So I think that revenge in a dish being served cold perhaps is where she's at. So what do you think that folk in your area are making of all this? Is anybody, I mean, I know when I speak to people in my neighbourhood, which is, you know, quite a mixed, we're a rural community, it's quite a mixed set of perspectives. And I'm finding that even former Tory voters, or you know, actually even a couple of potential candidates for the Tory party, were very, very disparaging about Boris Johnson and the direction that the Tory party in Westminster is taking. One prospective candidate was telling me at the last council elections, was telling me that he wasn't sure how long it would be if he was elected, which he was not, but if he was elected, how long it would be before he had the whip taken from him, because he was hoping to reform the Scottish Tory party. I mean, are you getting... So there's very little support for Boris Johnson that I come across here. What are your views? How are you finding it in your area?
Well, I mean, generally, I don't, you know, speak to an awful lot of Tories. You know, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I did have the unfortunate pleasure of having a Zoom call with Jackson Carlo, but that was about refugees and not about the inner machinations of the Tory party.
Or his
So
artwork.
it was tough to say the least, and let's put it this way: he didn't deliver on any of the promises that he come up with. But that's neither here nor there. East Wren is a very mixed constituency. I mean, 12 doors up from me, I actually live next to um, a certain chap called Blair McDougall. I believe you would know of Blair's existence. And his house was festooned with the usual Union Jackery over the weekend. And many other houses around this constituency were of the same ilk. Now, we know that Mr. McDougall is no lover of Boris Johnson, but he did famously predict that he would never become the actual Prime Minister of the country. So again, that's another one of be careful what you wish for, because it might come true. And but the East Wren has long been a bastion of Toryism. In fact, when if the boundaries hadn't been changed, we would have possibly had a SNP MSP, because the SNP vote share between Barrhead, Nielsen, and Clarkson, Giffnock, Eaglesham, Newton Mearns, and stuff like that. Polling them together, we would have won hands down. But the boundaries were changed, and Barrhead and Nielsen is now in Tom Arthur's constituency. So that was how Jackson Carlo was able to shoehorn his ticket back into Holyrood, and not the candidate that we selected, with a very able councillor, Councillor Colin Merrick, who's been on this show a couple of times. They hold on to the Unionist vote in East Renfrewshire. I have got a able-bodied descriptor for the holding on of that vote, but I don't think that the producer would allow me to elaborate on it.
Please don't.
Suffice to say that it's it is a very mixed bag, to give you an idea, we returned 6 SNP councillors to East Renfrewshire Council, and the upshot was that Labour joined the Tories with the help of 2 independents in order to keep us out of operating that council, even though we won the vote.
I guess that's the thing about coalitions, is that you end up with some strange bed partners, and it's very hard to imagine a time where the Labour Party of old would have contemplated getting into bed with the Tories rather than another left of centre party. It is an odd thing. Were there any Jubilee parties around your area? Were there? You're saying Blair McDougall. Did he have a little tea party in his street for the neighbours? And did you get a chance to ask anybody what they thought about Boris Johnson being booed?
I don't think that Blair had an actual tea party, because, well, I I didn't actually report any of this on Twitter, because the last time I commented on Blair's house, he threatened to report me to the. Well, actually, he did. He reported me to SNP headquarters and saying that I was stalking his house. Even although it's a one-way street, I have to drive past his house in order to get to my house, and then drive past his house in order to get back out onto the main road. So the man's delusional. There was a party at the Mearns Church. One of my friends does. He purveys inflatable tentage and stuff like that. And
I was waiting for where you were going with that. Yes.
Yeah. He does. He does these inflatable tents and marquees and stuff like that. And he said that there was about 200 people at that event. But there was no, I never, there were no roads cut off because of an abundance of trestle tables spread out in the middle of it. I didn't come across any of that chat. And even at that, the previous week, actually, it must be said, when I was down in the Socialist Republic of Liverpool, there was very, very little appetite for the butcher's apron down there, I can tell you.
I
I wouldn't
saw
like to tell you
a
what we were singing,
I saw
but you
I
can
saw
imagine.
yes, there was a song trending over the weekend about Prince Andrew and his sweat glands, but that's a different story altogether. Um,
I
so
believe that got to number one, Ruth.
yeah, you would. I mean, you really wouldn't want to be playing it too much, other than just to try and help get it there. Anyway, so there's no indication in your area as to what people are thinking in terms of the Prime Minister
Really
and his
not.
future.
I would say there's a general apathy towards the government at this moment in time. If I'm being, honest, there is no great love for Boris Johnson, and quietly they have a certain amount of discontent for him. But what is more troubling is the fact that that does not affect their undying love for the union. And I think that is the bigger question here. You could put a monkey. Well, and as a matter of fact, we have got, put a monkey in charge of the United Kingdom, and people voted for that monkey. Again, I go back to what I said earlier: is the fact that it is frightening to think of who would actually succeed him. Because there's no one really with any competency, excuse me, that actually, looks to be anyway able-bodied in order to carry out that particular office. It has been sadly demeaned, and make no mistake, I've got no love affair for Westminster. You obviously know that, Ruth. But I personally don't think that our MPs should be there at all. But that's again, I've fallen out with many a MP and MSP on that score as a Republican socialist. But what the wider question must be that whoever, regardless of what comes out of this vote, whether Johnson survives or not, is the continuation of the Tory agenda, which is, centralist politics within the southeast of the country, and to hell with the constituent parts, and to hell with actually listening to the constituent parts with regards their uh, 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 individual situations, because, as you rightly highlighted with the energy prices and stuff like that, Wales and Scotland are getting disproportionately affected, because we don't have a very fair system. Scotland produces, a vast amount of energy, and yet, if you look at one graphic, I think it was on Believe in Scotland site, is the fact that we are charged the highest of all of the UK, and yet it's actually produced in our country. So it's actually cheaper to export it down to the southeast than what it is that we're charging our own citizens for. It's madness.
Well, what do you I mean? Given the when you speak to Shetlanders about the amount of wind farms that they have, and there's some very mixed feelings up there. I mean, many Shetlanders I've spoken to are they understand about the climate emergency, they understand about the need for wind power, but they're very concerned about the direct impact that the wind towers are having. The scars across their hillsides. and yet they're being charged these immense prices. Same with Orkney. Most of the potential for Orkney and wind and tidal energy coming from there. Not to mention the fact that they do produce, bring in vast amount of our oil and gas, which we do still need, or we do still use. So what do you think are the ways in which this news, this actually really shocking news, can get out into our communities? And when you speak to people about things like the energy disparity and the disparity in the amount of that we are charged for our bills, especially during this cost of living crisis, what sort of responses are you getting, and how do you think we should be doing? What do you think we should be doing more to get that news out?
Well, you can't really get a fair and balanced response from a person that is uneducated in it, because when you put your point across, I mean, I actually had a friend who had his own wind company, a company called Windsave, and yes, he was, a bit of a Tory slanted chap, but he was a fellow season ticket holder at Parkhead, so I kind of put up with him for that. But yeah, no, I mean, his idea, back in the days when I'd actually worked in engineering, I used to have my own satellite and aerial business, and back in the day, his ethos was, wholly simple as far as I could see. It was basically turn up. I don't know if many viewers know what a T&K is, but a T&K is basically an apparatus in which you put a pole through it with two exhaust clamps and put the aerial or the dish on. And he wanted to do that in a grander scale for his turbines. So that a household could have its own turbine, which fed into the ring main of the house. It powered the house, and any residual energy went into the national grid. And I think that is wholly simplified. And in theory, it works. I've seen it work. I mean, he had a turbine on the side of his house, not 2 miles away from mine, down in the Broome Estate. And East Renfrewshire Council told him to take it down because he had not the proper planning permission for it. And this is a guy who was, to my mind, being very innovative and wanting to create an ongoing business concern that could benefit the citizens and also create jobs. And he was shot down, because against the huge wheel of fossil fuels, he represented a big threat. And as long as we are allowing the drawing on the fossil fuels, then we are always pandering to the capitalist agenda of the fact that they will go after any product that will give them the biggest profit.
Do you think that's part of the reason why the central government seems to be almost punishing those areas that produce the most of the renewable sector? Do you think that they perhaps fear the autonomy that will come if, for example, islanders so the island of Fula is an amazing place, but they've got what they call the windy light, and it's a windmill that produces the energy for their island. And if more and more areas become autonomous and sort of able to produce their own energy, and if they were to come up with sort of like water turbines or whatever just to fuel their communities, that might mean that they sort of fed into the capitalist machine a little less. And do you think that there's
Correct.
both a punishment happening but also an opportunity here?
Yeah, well, within the constituency of East Renfrewshire, which actually I'm actually going to, I have to bring this up because I came across this and I need the viewers to think me know about this. But East Renfrewshire today, according to data, is paying up £1,918 per year on energy bills, making it the 12th most expensive area in the UK. And what do we have in our constituency, Ruth? We have the biggest onshore wind farm in the UK, Whiteleys. And there is no storage or there is no storage or capture facility on that site, and it is the biggest site in the UK. Why
So
don't we have that?
what would you like to see the Scottish Government doing? Is this something that we have to wait for Scottish independence to be able to start developing these things because of the way that the structures are? Or is this something that you think that the Scottish Government could start taking action on before? Let's not wait for permission, let's get on with it.
Yeah, I think the Scottish Government need to be bolder. I think they need to play outside the grey lines, and don't you love this word, footer? Footer about. They have to footer about, in order to show that, with a wee bit of tinkering around the edges, that Scotland can actually stand on its own. Remember back in 2014, they said to us, oil dependency won't serve an independent Scotland because there is none. And now all of a sudden in 2021, 2022, they're turning around to us and saying, we need the oil in the northeast in order to help out with the cost of living crisis. So it seems to, Scotland's oil wealth seems to dissipate with the constitutional question. If you don't ask a constitutional question, there's a lot of oil. If you ask a constitutional question, there's no oil left. So, in order to get that out of the discussion altogether, is the fact that we need to, and the Scottish Government is doing an awful lot of work on a just transition to a more sustainable, greener source of energy. And it is proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that we are, rich in obviously natural wind. Scotland's been known for it for years. I mean, Billy Connolly used to tell the story about going up to Stornoway and tying his wains onto a piece of string outside the sweetie shop, while he went in for, and they would just sit there paragliding and stuff like that, so that, they wouldn't run away. We need to harness, what is right for us, and we were hampered. We were hampered back in the 70s to harness what was right for us then. It was right then that we had this, black gold, but it didn't serve Scotland. It served London, and you look at the pomp and ceremony, and all the big houses and stuff like that, and the infrastructure that was put into London. That was all off of Scotland's oil.
It's fascinating. I was watching the new series of Borgen, which came out last night, and I was watching it last night, and the first episode that I was watching is about the people of Greenland. So this narrative goes, discovering oil in their land, and they were talking about the amount being equivalent to Norway's largest oil field and the amount of money there. And I was watching that with my husband, saying it's just, that's Norway's largest oil field, and this is how much it's worth in today's terms, and Scotland's oil significantly more than that. And I wondered how many people watching Borgen, if many people do over here, would be sort of joining the dots as I do. And yet we're looking at, for example, petrol prices and diesel prices reaching a record high. And even I mean, for example, natural gas, the price of that is going down, and yet we're still paying huge amounts for our fuel. And in terms of petrol and diesel, the kind of the hidden costs for many workers and many hauliers, and how people getting food to and from our shops, it's skyrocketing. So do you think that there's an end in sight for that, or France, they capped the oil.
No,
Countries across Europe, they have. Why haven't they done it here?
they haven't done it here because they don't want to offend their capitalist friends, and it has nothing to do with inward investment, as they suggest. I don't see anybody investing the way that we want them to invest. Say, for argument's sake, Grangemouth. The Scottish Government offered Grangemouth or Ineos a huge amount of money in order to change its the way that it operates and how it handles fossil fuels, and to look at inward investment into more greener technology. And I believe that met with some slight resistance. I think they went some way in order to pacify the Scottish Government. I don't think the Scottish Government were as heavy-handed as what they could have been, because they wanted Grangemouth to continue in its production for obvious reasons. Sometimes you have to dance with the devil, and activists need to be aware of that. You can't just go carte blanche and say we want this, we want that, and then just stave off, the production in the industry in one fell swoop. It has to be, as I point out, a green transition. A transition is not a cut off. A transition is just that, transit from one to the other. And I know I'm sounding like somebody at a play school, but sometimes people need to actually understand what things actually mean. A lot of political parties come out with sound bites, and all sounds grand, fine, fair, and dandy. But when you actually analyse what a soundbite actually intends to mean, then you can possibly think about understanding, what it would take in order to achieve that.
Yes, there's quite a lot of smoke and mirrors, and people being quite disingenuous. Now, I'm watching the clock ticking towards 8 o'clock, so very quickly I'm going to ask you, what do you think is facing Trump? I mean, is it going to be just a big soap opera, or do you think there's going to be something tangible at the very end of it?
No, it's, as you suggest, I think it's going to be a big old American soap opera. My only hope is that he doesn't get any royalties from it. But as slippery as we know him to be, I think he'll probably be able to engineer something that will, I mean, not that he needs it. I mean, Trump is horribly wealthy. Not the man himself. His companies are extraordinarily wealthy. So I think it's going to be another sideshow, which is going to play out for the American audience in reality fashion, which certainly doesn't interest us socialists, that's for sure.
Do you think it will serve Biden's ends, though, if we're coming up for the midterm elections? If
No, I
there's
don't
any
think so.
seeds sown?
No, I don't think so. I think the country have seen the corruption and the inequality created by Trump, and I think although Biden is maybe not the most popular choice, I think Biden was only ever going to serve one term anyway, and I think that he will slowly start to, if he's not done it already, actually, people like Calvin Harris and all the rest of it, that he will slowly bring people up to the fore and give them more of the centre stage, and he'll sort of like theatrically withdraw into the backlight, as we used to say in the old stage terms.
As we may see with Boris Johnson as the evening progresses. Now, Before I say good, before I thank you for coming onto the show, I'm going to do things a little differently. Usually, at the end of Broadcasting Scotland at 7, we have a wee bit of a spiel about how we've got a fundraiser and how we're looking for money to in order to keep the cameras rolling. But Chris, I'd like to ask you. There's a huge fundraiser happening at the moment with the cost of living crisis. Broadcasting Scotland has to get more people subscribing, has to get regular
Yeah.
people putting out a couple of pounds a week or a couple of pounds a month into the coffers to keep Broadcasting Scotland going. What would you like to see happening? And what, as we get out, we try and encourage people to support Scotland's independent media. Why do you think this is important? Why do you take part in these programmes? And what would you like to see?
Well, I mean, thank you very much for asking because I think this is absolutely wonderful that you're asking my opinion. And this is no way blowing up my own persona, but I give my time, like yourself, absolutely free of charge because I believe in the project. I believe in the project that Broadcasting Scotland can be an independent news outlet for an independent Scotland, and that is it. I am fed up, as you probably are yourself, Ruth, listening to activists bemoan that the British state media, the BBC, the ITV, and all the rest of it. There are other mediums, of course. And yet, you constantly see them on social media. Oh, BBC said this or ITV said that. Broadcasting Scotland has got 14,000 followers on Twitter. If every one of those followers put a fiver in, a month, we could have our own media where, we could employ in excess of 50 jobs, which, would be paying the real living wage, not the living wage of the Tory party, but the real living wage fitting for Scotland. We could be creating an industry that is, in dire need of an injection of new thought. You know yourself. You've worked for the opposition before, I believe. Similar to my good friend Hardeep Singh Kohli. And if you're outspoken in that establishment in any such way, shape, or form, you're sidelined. But look, that is neither here nor there. Competition is always healthy, but it is an unfair competition when the fact that this project receives very little funding from outside sources, except from the people that are actually viewing it. And I made the point on Twitter today is the fact that this will always be free. You are donating, you are investing into a project. In the upcoming Indie Ref 2 will be vital in order to rebuff, in order to challenge any, mistruths and misdemeanors, coming out of the establishment. And it is the one tool that the establishment rule well, and that is the fact that they rule their own media. And
Thank you
we
very
need to be able to not rule our own media, but we need to watch our own media and we need to share our own media.
So you heard it here. Please, if you want to watch Scottish programmes without the cringe, please support Broadcasting Scotland. You can watch the programmes, you can share the programmes. If you can, please stick a fiver in the coffers. The cost of living crisis has hit Broadcasting Scotland too. If you want to watch an independent media for Scotland's future, please support us if you can. Thank you very much for watching. Good evening.